We begin with nothing. And out of nothing comes everything. A few years ago, I did a theme called Beyond Belief. But I decided to reprise it with the emphasis on not belief or questions of faith, but on actions and ritual. And specifically, I was thinking of the Oracle of Delphi in ancient Greece. And one of the mottos there was aimed to be associated with the philosopher Socrates, and that was know thyself. I had the philosophical center of Burning Man, and our motto is a phrase by the American philosopher William James, who said, "Belief is thought at rest." And if you don't make room for the unknown in your world, you'll probably end up by trapping yourself and cutting yourself off from the world.
I think there is a distinction between what you might just call ritual generally and what we're calling radical ritual, which is the name of this theme. A ritual in general terms is something that you do on a routine basis, but there's another kind of ritual, which is setting the stage to unleash your creative capacities. Instead of doing the same thing over and over again, you are setting up the environment in such a way that you can access greater creativity, access a greater sense of connectedness. And you don't know what's going to happen then. The whole point is that you're sort of taking a step into the unknown, maybe even a kind of leap of faith. And these are radical rituals.
Since I can remember, the first act is to locate with the GPS the center from which the entire city is surveyed. And what that results in is that as people walk down these radial streets, the man is always hovering before them. And indeed, every turning, every dimension of the entire plan of the city derives from that infinitesimal space. Early on, many years ago, when that time came to drive that stake in the ground, everyone takes a hammer and imparts an ounce of energy in tapping that spike. And of course the man goes over that, so his spine is coterminous with it. And it's one axis. And on that temple, it continues upward as a golden spike. So I thought to call it the Temple of the Golden Spike. Not the Temple of the Man, but the Temple of the Golden Spike. And that meant we had to put him in a house, in a home, and close him. Then there was much controversy about that.
This is the first year in Burning Man's history that the man has been enclosed in a space, even a temple-like space. And in many ways, when we first published that, people were appalled. They were sort of horrified. What are you doing?
At the end, there was the argument we had. Well, leave it open so you can see the whole figure as you move toward it. But I said, no. If they see the whole figure, they'll say to themselves from a distance, they'll say, well, it's big. And they'll grow used to the fact that it's big, and when they walk in, they won't even look at it because they know what it is, they think. I said, no, we put a door in front, so they walk in. To having to elevate their gaze, actually bend the top of their spine until they feel almost as if they'll topple over, so that he feels impossibly large, vastly larger than they are. And that will inspire awe.
And then you started to get these comments that, no, this is perfectly appropriate because isn't this the man's home? And by combining the figure of the man with elements of the temple, which are, thoughtful and mournful and more sober, you've sort of encapsulated the full continuum of ritual in this one structure. Radical has multiple meanings, and the one that most people are most familiar with involves, going for broke out there. But it also means, in a very basic sense, what is fundamental to. This theme has triggered a lot of responses in people, and the real key question here appears to be, how much attention does it get you to pay? Rituals, our daily rituals, do have an effect on us, do have a power on us. There are many things that if you aren't prepared to see them or notice them, you don't notice them at all.
And we wouldn't ask anyone to believe anything, but we provide them with experience, and then they'd have to work to construe that as meaning, their own meaning in their own lives. And I think we'd fit in. If you can get people, put them in sort of existential situations, it's fraud, A tornado or two doesn't hurt. And then you invite them to work and play. And if you have them do both at the same time, rituals just originate naturally. Labor takes you away from your ego, and play frees your imagination from incessant self-concern, and combine those two things that make you self-forgetful, and you'll inherit a lot of spirit and soul. And then what happened in instance in time, rituals just originate naturally. Not even thinking about it consciously, just having internalized them all, you just do it. Again, it's about doing.
I had been very inspired by Burning Man art and wanted to contribute a large-scale installation of some kind. And the question was, what could we bring to the playa that might be missing? So that's kind of where the idea for the tree came, and we were doing some research online and found the tree of Tenere, which was a tree that grew in the middle of the Sahara Desert. And it used to attract desert traders and travelers during their journey across the Sahara. It sort of fits perfectly with Burning Man itself. The original tree of Tenere was a desert tree. Its roots had grown 100 feet down to the nearest water table, and it was the only tree for 250 miles. That original tree was actually much smaller than this one. It was an acacia, and completely unremarkable in many ways, but because it was the only tree around, people would go out of their way to meet under this tree for shade, for community, for ritual, and for rest. We thought that putting a tree in the middle of the desert might attract, large communities of people, not just to climb, but also to interact with the tree and perform rituals. And we thought at Burning Man that would almost be a sort of identical type of experience. We never actually saw the full thing put together until we came out on the playa to build it. The tree came in 40 pieces, and we had to string 3 miles of wire for power and data before we could assemble the limbs and put them onto the tree and put all the leaves on. And that took 3 or 4 days alone. It was a really, really difficult process. So we wanted the tree to be climbable, and it's very challenging to kind of do that with real wood or with like a real tree. So we decided to make the tree from a steel substructure, which is strong enough to support 60 climbers. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of technology that goes into the tree, but ultimately we thought the idea of building a lifelike tree in the middle of the desert could create sort of drawing into nature and an appreciation for nature, which is not something you normally associate with the desert. Now, this tree, if you saw it in your neighborhood or in a park, you almost wouldn't even notice it. But when it's the only tree around, it sort of becomes a magnet for people. I think we were all very happy with the result. It sort of almost felt like it took on a life of its own.
I'm an artist and been coming to Burning Man for the last 8 to 9 years. This year is special because my partner and I wanted to bring out an actual art piece to bring to the playa. So in 2015, Lake County had a wildfire that raged through the whole county and burnt over 100,000 acres of forest land, including my place. Ironically, I decided not to work that year for Man Base, and I wanted to focus on my farm and my home up in the mountains. And thank God I was there because the place burned down. No, it's a raven.
It's a raven?
Representing the magic of the unknown. You fall into the unknown, you never know how to get caught.
Oh, I love that.
It's a memorial for the Lake County fires. Burned down like hundreds of thousands. So the place where we've created all this is called Raven's Landing. And so we have a bunch of ravens. And so we wanted to create a home and a special space for the ravens. So the idea was to take the burnt trees and the beauty that is in the forest after a fire and present it to people.
Beauty lies in a burnt forest. The life has already been taken, and the space is to have this kind of opportunity to preserve the wood. An illustrator, and Lena is my mentor too, and her story has inspired me a lot. At Raven's Landing, we always thought about building tree houses, but we didn't want to kill the trees or harm the trees. So now kind of nature made this setting, and also it makes it more real that they've been already burned.
All these trees have been hand-chosen by Ava and I to become part of this project. They were previously burnt in the fires. This here is really special wood. This is manzanita wood. It's different than the oak, but this also burnt up in the fires. When we took them out of the forest, it's very different. We had to debark them so that there was no moop, and then we recharred them back up to look burnt and then shellac them. When you're working with natural and you want to keep it natural, you let it be what it wants to be instead of manipulating it to what you want it to be. So I left these ones black. What was interesting about the manzanita is as I sanded down more and more the layers, it got more and more beautiful. And you could see these stripes and these movements and the colors coming out. The more we take off our layers, the more beauty we have inside. Hopefully people realize when they see and understand the story of fire and losing everything, but being able to look past all that and create something. 2 years ago, I had nothing. I didn't even know who I was in a way because I lost everything. with the help of Burning Man organization and the grant that we were able to create beautiful artwork to bring to the playa for thousands of people. I know there's a lot of people still holding on to the idea of their loss, and hopefully something like this will kind of give them that inspiration to let go and move on.
I think this year's temple is good. And you know always, if it's no good, burn it. Left trouble behind, and you know that notion just crossed my mind. 72 years old. Is that the question? No. My name's David Best, and I'm in Nevada at the Black Rock Desert. And I'm in a bust that I made at the World Wood Day in 2017 for Long Beach, California. It was funded by Wood Culture, and I've brought it from California to Nevada. I'm happy. I thought maybe the man base was going to try to take away from the temple, but you can't. The temple is a different thing than this, you know? And so that made me happy that both of them could survive, you know? This is a place where all hell breaks loose, and everybody should be happy and yell and scream. And that should be a place where people reflect. Everybody has rituals, you know? When you get up in the morning and you brush your teeth, that's a ritual. You know? You get home at night after work and you take off your clothes and you sit down and you have a cup of tea or a drink. That's a ritual, you know? I will say one thing about this. There's nobody being stabbed out here. There's no one being stabbed or beaten. And you're safe to be gay or black or transsexual or have big breasts or little breasts. You're safe here. It's a community that respects that diversity. And that is pretty unique. I've come to the conclusion that putting a bunch of crosses on something, or Buddhas, or Stars of David, or Islamic prayers, does not make a place sacred. You know, that's religion. And something sacred is something different than religion.
The temple at Burning Man serves as a very important anchor for the event. It is a counterbalance to the party of Burning Man. Most of the rest of the city is about celebration, which is incredible. It's a great way to express yourself. But I think something that was missing was a place for grief, and the temple over the years has filled that role and is a very, very important part of the entire event.
The temple is always a place of healing for people. But this year's temple, we have a broader message. It's not just about healing for people, it's about healing of the disruptive balance that we have in our forests. Millions of trees are dying or dead in California. We want to bring attention to that, and We want to let people know that it's important then to remove the dead trees and show that these dead trees are useful.
I've been working on this project for a year, and I started thinking about it actually before Burning Man last year. When I was coming to Burning Man, I drove through Yosemite, and I looked down, and in the valley next to Yosemite, it was 50% of the forest was dead. And I thought maybe we can use these dead trees to build something in the community that will bring awareness to what's happening in our environment.
The Burning Man Temple this year takes a bit of a new take on what the temple is. You know, Burning Man can sometimes have a reputation for not being very sustainable. It takes a lot of energy to bring art out to the desert. So we wanted to try to find a material that was more sustainable. We started by choosing a very special material in beetle kill pine. Mauricia was very compelled to these dead trees, and we're able to find a source for these logs to be donated to our project. You can't really use this stuff to build a house. It's not commercial grade lumber, but for the temple, it was perfect.
For the most part, all the other lumber that's used here on La Playa comes from trees that were alive, that were cut down and made into lumber. And last year's temple, which was reclaimed pallets, all the other temples were conventional timber that were derived from live trees that were cut down and brought here. These were all dead trees.
So once we found this more sustainable material, the next consideration was, how can we create a system that lets people understand that this is a unique type of wood? So we milled all of the pieces into 3 inches by 6 inches, which is a very large dimension. So as soon as you see the temple, you know something's going on here. Like, this is not a normal structure. The temple this year is in honor of nature. So it focuses your energy on the sky, and it's like a portal to let things go. The temple is already a sacred space. What we did a little differently this year, instead of having a chandelier and a central altar, we made a void space in the middle, and you can stand in the center of the space. And we had a Native American elder from the Paiute tribe come on Saturday to do a blessing at the temple. And when he came inside, he looked up and he said, "Oh, this is a basket, and we're basket weaving people. So this building is like speaking to our culture and our history." When we open the temple, it feels like the temple of the temple crew. And I went back the next day, and it was already covered with offerings and writing, and every single piece of wood and every altar had a message. It's like we just create the shell, and our whole community creates the project.
The temple this year was built by 1/3 of the crew that I'd worked with over the years. The temple always affects the community because it's a place for forgiveness and reflection. So they know the rule. They have to make a place that's sacred, and they're treating the material as if it's sacred. I think they've done it. You know, I think they've worked really respectful as a crew, and they built a temple that's totally like theirs and not like mine.
Do it better though, right? Last year we used reclaimed timber to build the temple. This year we're taking it up a notch, and we're actually built a whole temple out of dead trees. No live trees were cut for this temple.
My role this year is the ecologist. So I provide the expertise into understanding the story of the wood and elaborating on it. So in 2016, I was involved in the World Wood Day event sponsored by the International Wood Culture Society. We built a beautiful stupa in Bungamani in Kathmandu. What's really important about the Nepal temple and this temple is that there's a story behind the material. In Nepal, it was reclaimed wood from earthquake rubble, and in a way it was hopefully using that wood to rebuild connectedness and hope for the people who are severely affected by the earthquake there. Same here, we're trying to bring attention and awareness to the problem of forest decline. In this case, what we're doing is we're trying to then take it up even a notch, not just reclaim lumber, but dead trees, and let's build a temple. So what happened in Nepal probably started something. And in fact, we're already getting people contacting us going, you know, we want to learn more about how you got the wood and how you used it, because it's a much more ecologically sound way to build here on the playa than to use live tree.
I think we raised the bar. You know, there's been a lot of incredible temples built at Burning Man, and some of them have explored sustainable materials, some of them have explored new designs, and I think we really worked hard to raise the bar in what sustainable material means.
And I think this is a really important shift. How can we create a more sustainable event? We can't have a model just for culture. We also need a model for ecology.
Anything we do, any activity humans do, requires resources. Burning Man has a lot of wood, right? Lots of wood. We've just shown that we can use dead trees. We don't have to cut down live trees. That's ecologically much more beneficial for the environment, to utilize dead trees. We've just proven the concept. That's a beautiful message that this temple is trying to get out.
You know, in the history of mankind, the rituals and religious traditions that people follow, it wasn't because someone said, we have a belief, now let's illustrate that with this. No, it's that we have an experience, and that leads to an action. But all of that is actions. It's not based on beliefs, it's based on what you do, and what you do will determine what you feel, and what you feel then creates an arc of meaning between you and what you see, and that opens our heart to others and to the world. And that's how they originate. They don't originate as illustrations of an idea.
Well, a lot of that kind of ritual, what I would call radical ritual, involves things like exposure to nature, involves things like engagement with art, and Burning Man combines all of these things to a great degree. And so you have play, you have art, you have the stark beauty of nature, you have yourself engaging in activities, and all of that combines to create an atmosphere where it's very easy to find yourself outside of yourself, experiencing higher creative powers or just connecting in a different way with other people. Over time, I've really seen that turn around until a lot of people were not only thoughtfully provoked by the theme and the way we were approaching it, but actually inspired to re-examine what ritual is in their lives and how they would want to reconsider. And that's really, really gratifying.
wonderful to come out here at night and see so many people under the tree that you almost couldn't fit. I think most people thought it was a crazy idea. There's 20,000 leaves, 140,000 LEDs, and we invited artists and technologists from around the world to contribute light patterns and to do integrations with different sensors. And so we wanted people to come together in kind of creative acts, which are rituals of Burning Man. And then all the participants who came and interacted with the tree and enjoyed it are all part of the story of this. And I think that fulfilled our wishes that this become a place of community and rest, just like the original tree of Tenere.
Faith doesn't mean you have to be empty-headed, but I think that we should regularly remind ourselves to be humble. Because if we think we can understand the universe with our little constructed thoughts, we're wrong. And we should regularly tap ourselves on the shoulder and realize there are things beyond you that you don't know. But if you're receptive, you might gain inspiration. If you gain inspiration, then you might create something. And then people say, where'd you get that idea? And you'll say, I don't know, it just came to me.
We get into our habits and our daily lives because they're the things that we need to do to keep going. But why do we live in the first place? What is it that makes life so engaging and rewarding? And I would say it is the kind of activities and mental states that are involved in either creating or experiencing radical ritual, acts of creativity, acts of human connection, acts of establishing a rapport with something greater than yourself. I think those are really what makes life worth living in the first place, why we live, what we really care about and are passionate about. So in many ways, I think this kind of activity allows us to reassert our humanity.
That this large city, which is called a playa, it's Spanish for beach, and I think that in relation to our future in the world, it's like that original beach. And it's going to grow again. So it's not just a party in the desert. And of course, we'll leave no trace. When we're done, it will be as if we were never here. And we have to do that so we can do it again. It's ritual.